Hello, everybody. That was kind of dumb. I was here at 12 o'clock, but I spent the first minute not being in. How are you all doing today? This wonderful April Sunday afternoon. We got a couple weeks under our belt in the baseball thing. Still, we talked about last week. There's still a lot of anger out there. I'd like to, address that a little bit. I'd like to take a moment, take a deep breath, close your eyes, think of a happy place. Might be at the beach with the smooth sound of crashing waters, or a field of sunflowers, or for me, it's when Anthony Rizzo caught the last out in the 2016 World Series. And just breathe out and let that anger go out with you. Breathe in. Anthony Rizzo catches the ball, tags first base. Breathe out with all that negative energy. We need to do this every week because there seems to be a lot of people that are ticked off when we're having a great baseball season. 2 no-hitters, some great stories like Trey Mancini returning, or the wonderful impact of Yerman Mercedes or Akil Baddoo off Rule of 5. The series we had just this weekend with the Padres and the Dodgers. It's been a good year for baseball, and especially coming off of last year where a lot of things just went poorly. It's just been so much better. And now there's a lot of reasons to be unhappy. Don't get me wrong. The news today, and it was one that I was doing just before. Hello, Andrea says hello. Hi, Andrea. Sorry, the quick news. This is what I was doing just before the show. Is I was trying to figure out a replacement for Steven Strasburg, who I have in a lot of leagues. Steven Strasburg's gone to the 10-day DL, retroactive for a couple of days, meaning he can come back as early as the 25th. Though I'm not thinking that's going to with some right shoulder inflammation. He was seen after his last game in the tunnel, rubbing his shoulder. And what it is. I mean, when you see the right shoulder inflammation, you think you think things are bad. I don't think he's going to be back on the 25th. But remember in the old days when they had the 15-day DL? It seemed to me that people actually got healthy in 15 days. And in 10 days, they just don't. So I don't really worry as long as it's 15 days or less. And, but, you haven't heard the second part of that, which is always, there's the middle ground. He's scheduled for arthroscopic surgery, which you haven't heard that. And then there's the really awful thing. He's scheduled to meet with Dr. He who shall not be named. But I'm hoping for the best there. Just to be fair, in the league that I was in, where I could make a move today, because he was starting today, I picked up Wade Miley. It's a categories. It's actually 6x6 categories league, with holds and saves being 2 categories for pitchers. And Wade Miley's pitching today. I'm actually up significantly. I'm up 10-1 in the league. I'm down by 1 in wins, so I wanted to get a pitcher that pitched today. So that's why I put him in there. You should also note that on the good side, I always like when a prospect gets called up. And today, the Arizona Diamondbacks, because of a injury to Tyler Clippard, has called up relief pitcher J.B. Buskauskas. If you remember Buskauskas, he was actually a former first-round draft pick. I think he was in the top 5 of the Houston Astros. He was traded to the Diamondbacks in the Greinke deal. He always kind of floundered in the Astros minor leagues, not because he wasn't good, but because they had so many other pitchers that were better and more highly touted, like Corbin Martin and Forrest Whitley and Jose Urquidy, Framber Valdez, Cianel Perez. I know I'm missing a couple more, but there were a lot of them. So when he traded him away, they moved him to become a relief pitcher. He was actually very good in the spring training, and everyone thought he might break camp with them. In spring training, in 7.2 innings, he struck out 14 batters, only allowed 3 hits and no walks, and no earned runs. But they sent him to the alternate site. I don't really know why, but it might be the service time or whatever. But with relief pitchers, you never think that people care that much. but he has the capacity to be one of those really, really dominating middle relievers. Before the season, I said, like, I was trying to name other people I thought could be as good as Devin Williams, and I'm going to break and go to talk about Devin Williams here. And I named Alex Reyes and Julian Merriweather. The guys that can be dominating in your thing. There's a spot in this thing today where I was going to talk about people that should you cut or keep, and the truth is, almost everybody you should keep. It's only been 3 weeks, unless there's a real cause for it. But one guy that fits in that category that I've been asked about a lot is a guy I was high on because I drafted him in at least one league and maybe two, which is Devin Williams of Milwaukee. And he's got the name recognition that I would say that you should try to trade him before you try to keep him. But unlike a shaky closer who might get you a 4 ERA and let up a few runs, but still get you that save, which is what we basically draft relief pitchers for. Almost all their value is based on that. When you draft Devin Williams, you're drafting for a guy that's going to give you 3, 4, 5 innings a week of really good baseball. Strikeout per inning, maybe more, low whip, low ERA, and Devin Williams is not doing that. And he came to camp late, and he's certainly not ready to play. And so you're in a situation where I have little doubt that Devin Williams, Jay Bruce just retired. Well, if you get benched for Rougned Odor, you should retire. That's a sign. They want Rougned Odor to play instead of me? Wow, I must be bad. It's time to hang it up. So with that, I say goodnight to Jay Bruce. Jay Bruce, I remember when you were a rookie. You came up as a rookie in Cincinnati, and you were just one of those guys that happen every year or so, every couple of years. Hunter Pence was another one the year before years, where you come as a rookie and you have that great end of the season, and you helped a lot of teams to the playoffs. And we really thought that you were going to be a superstar, and you were good for a few years. And then it sort of trailed off rather abruptly. But anyway, I'll always remember you fondly for that rookie season. With that, I tip my hat, if I had a hat, to Jay Bruce. Well, back to Devin Williams. Like, this is what you want of a middle reliever. And you want guys that give you good innings. And right now, in a lot of leagues, there actually are people that actually can do this. And I don't mean lots of people. There are people I think can do it, and I'm going to give you those names. But in one league I was in, I own Devin Williams, and TJ Antone's out there. And I have no reason to believe that TJ Antone is worse than Devin Williams. Devin Williams had 20 great innings last year. That's all we've seen from him. And TJ Antone looks really filthy with this stuff. And I was saying before the season, I'd rather him be a dominant middle reliever than him be a starting pitcher where he's probably gonna be like a 4 ERA guy. I mean, perfectly good and useful from a Major League Baseball perspective, but from a finish perspective, he's a back end starter to streamer. So I thought about dropping Devin Williams to pick up TJ Antone, and I would have, except I thought I'd throw Williams out and see if I can get a trade back and just get some piece of something back for him first and then pick him up, because the truth is there is that quality in the cut pile. And I think that J.B. Bukauskas could be this kind of pitcher. And so I'm going to add a couple names to this list. Ryan Weathers is one of these guys I think could be this kind of pitcher. Now, he did start the other night and looked pretty decent. Maybe they move him to the starting role on San Diego. But if he's a reliever, he could be that dominating. Similarly, if the Braves continue to use Sean Newcomb as a relief pitcher, he could be that kind of dominating relief pitcher. The guy that it seems by the numbers has been doing it so far is Connor Brogdon of Philadelphia. And so in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, you only roster a middle reliever, and there's different in holds leagues. They might get holds, and that's something. But in most leagues, it's just saves. If you're picking a relief pitcher, and saves are not why he's on your team, you're better off picking TJ Antone today than waiting for Devin Williams to get better in 30 days, because they're going to have similar type numbers, and the guy who's playing well now is going to have more of them. So that's the one guy that was going through there. Minnesota versus the Angels game tonight is postponed. We do have a couple late games still. The Braves are playing the Cubs and the second Red Sox game. Bryce Harper was held out yesterday with lower back tightness, though he's in the lineup today for the Phillies, though the lower back tightness might explain why he's not hitting as well as we'd hoped just yet. Gary Sanchez exited yesterday with a hand injury. Kyle Shigawa is starting today. Sanchez getting injured might be the best thing that happened to the Yankees because it's a guy that just needs to sit down for a little bit. He needs to go down. He needs to go down to the minor leagues, figure out how to hit, just hit the ball, like strike the ball, figure out if he's going to be a catcher, and then figure that out. If not, he needs to play some first base because he's on a team with too many designated hitters, and right now I can't imagine anybody trading for a DH that's hitting 167. But if he was a first baseman that was hitting 167, that might do something different because it brings at least the National League into the question. Somebody might just want a hitter that has a lot of power. Hell, somebody signed Rougned Odor. Josh Harrison was held out yesterday with back stiffness. He was having a really nice comeback year, hitting over 500 over last week. He's an older dude, so he's probably going to miss a few games here and there. That just happens. Ozzie Albies was held out yesterday with calf soreness. To be seen what he's playing today. As of noon today, there was no post as a lineup to the Braves, so just something to be aware of. Gavin Lux has missed 3 games with right wrist soreness. And Buster Posey was left last night. Did not play yesterday because of a left elbow contusion and is not playing today in favor of Kirk Casale. Yesterday, the biggest news on the deal, bigger than Strasburg even, was Christian Yelich went to the DL. Christian Yelich is a first-round pick in my mind, in most people's minds, in most people's leagues, and he's had a rough 2020 and a decently rough 2021 so far. Maybe a 10-day break will help him out. Is Kyle Hendricks starting tonight? That's something you got to look at. He was scratched last week, his last time out with an illness, and hopefully he's over that. I didn't check that beforehand. Mike Moustakas out yesterday with an illness. Martin Maldonado was out yesterday with an illness. Lance McCullers is out there with illness. I mean, and the guys are out with, like Angelo Simmons, Teoscar Hernandez out with COVID. I've never seen more people out with just a general illness than I've seen this year. And if there's one thing to be unhappy about this year, it's the way COVID is affecting baseball. But the truth is, the way COVID is affecting all our lives has been something to be unhappy about. I'm not going to get to the point of anger over it, but it just seems kind of odd that all these guys are sick while we have this once-in-a-90-year virus going around. And apparently they don't have COVID. I think there might be something going on there. They're reluctant to say they have COVID because once you say one guy has COVID, then you have to analyze 9 players. So they go out of their minds like, no, it's not COVID. No, it's not COVID. The truth is, since this COVID thing has happened and, we've done the things that, you're supposed to do, like wear masks in big crowds and avoid big crowds and wash your hands a lot. I think I've had the healthiest year in terms of flu and illness that I've ever had. I can't remember. I think I told this story off the air that, I take care of my 77-year-old mother, and on her Medicaid form, on her enrollment, they give her $40 every 6 months to buy general first aid supplies. Preventative stuff. And so, she was looking at it. She goes, should I buy this sore throat spray? I'm like, yeah, probably. It's good to have around, but I haven't had a sore throat since January of 2020. And neither of you. Like, yeah. It's kind of crazy. But apparently there's a lot of people sick. No one is getting the flu or the cold except for baseball players. That's kind of neat. Lance McCullers is out with illness. Check to see if he starts on Tuesday. The week that was, I've actually figured out how I want to organize my notes for this in a really good way. Unfortunately, I figured it out about an hour before the show, so I couldn't change it for this week 100% because there's a lot of information. And the information that I have is good through Saturday, though I do have some Sunday information. But this week, Loris Gurriel and Robbie Ray were activated by the Blue Jays. Josh Bell and Kyle Schwarber activated for the Nationals. Kyle Schwarber had a walk-off home run. He actually looks weird in a Nationals uniform, but he looks good in it. He actually looks a little bit slimmer or something. I think he's going to have a nice year. Angels placed Anthony Rendon on the 10-day with a left groin strain. Andrian Morejon of the Padres went on the 10-day, and the Rays optioned Brent Huddle after his little start. His really nice little 2-inning start. He's going to be a guy in the future. The Rockies signed Ivan Nova to a minor league contract, and the Dodgers signed Steven Souza to a minor league contract. On Tuesday, we got Zach Gallen back from IL. The Angels placed Max Stassi on the 10-day. Kind of strange. I actually was thinking that with Sanchez, they could trade him to the Angels because they could use a catcher. But if they trade Sanchez to the Angels still could use a catcher. The Phillies recalled Spencer Howard, and the Phillies recalled former number 1 pick Mickey Moniak, who's getting the starts in center field with Hazley on the restricted list. Definitely a player to watch. The Twins activated Josh Thompson on Wednesday, while the Sox put Dylan Cease on the 10-day AL. The Astros lost a bunch of people to COVID. Add to the thing: Jordan Alvarez, Bregman, Altuve, Maldonado, just to name a few. The Twins brought up Alex Kirilloff, who was probably the rookie that we thought we'd see earliest. Actually, kind of shocked he didn't break with camp. The Twins placed Simmons on the DL with COVID. Brewers placed Lorenzo Cain on the DL with a back issue. I like Cain a lot, but he is getting older and he's tough playing center field. And the truth is, Jackie Bradley Jr. has been hitting pretty well since he's been playing center field. Maybe he's just more comfortable there. And the Blue Jays placed Julian Merriweather on the 10-day, making us all rush and think, what, Jordan Romano's going to be great. And then Jordan Romano goes on the same thing the next day, which throws that thing off. The Blue Jays also placed Jordan Romano. Yankees. Oh, wow. I did not scroll down. Let's see what's going on here. I'm going to finish this up, and then I'm going to talk about the chat room. And join us on the chat room, wherever you want. I prefer it on Lenny's site because I'm trying to promote the Lenny Melnick FantasySports.com site. But on Facebook, the advantage is if you put a comment there, I can actually put it on the screen, which is kind of neat. So I'm gonna check both of those with some regularity. The Blue Jays recalled Anthony Kay, who was a pitcher that I was pretty high on at one point. The Tigers recalled, though he didn't do that well in his one play. Jose Jimenez to add to that mix of the Tigers have yet to really decide on a closer, and I don't even know if closer really matters there because they're a combination of horrible and scores a lot of runs. I don't think the Tigers actually had a save opportunity this week. And the Tigers put Nomar Mazara on the 10-day, which is good for Akil Baddoo. There's absolutely no reason why he shouldn't play now. There's no room not to play him. And then on Friday, the Drew Smiley went on the 10-day for the Braves, and that's pretty much the people we lost and gained throughout the week. I tried not to be exhaustive, just cover the people that are important, and I got it figured out, but it'll be better next week. I promise you that. Malpal is in the chat room, along with who you can probably hear on Monday night on the round table. I have a couple general issues like I want to talk about, but they're more discussion issues than I cover on this thing. I had a trade vetoed in a league this week, and it's just nuts. Maybe I'm going to bring it up on Monday night. Malpal says the Yankees miss Voit. They sure do. He says he's a Padres fan. Weathers looks good. I think that Weathers does look good. He looked good in relief, and he was kind of quietly going under the radar. And the one thing that my home league, I have a home league and a home dynasty league. My home league is a 6x6 roto that has holds as a position. And as in weekly leagues, there's an advantage to having what they call SPARPs, a relief pitcher, a starter who is relief qualified. In a daily lineup leagues, there's an advantage to having the reverse, where you have a relief pitcher who's starting pitcher qualified, because every day you can put in new players. And even, no matter how great no matter how great Jake DeGrom is, he's only going to pitch once or twice a week, meaning that slot is empty 5 days a week every week. And if you have a a relief pitcher that can slot into a starter spot, you can start one more reliever than your other teams. He's saying he thinks that Paddock will go out of rotation. I think guys are getting post-vaccine illness. That's what they're saying about McCullers. It is one of those things, but that it might be that. But then there are guys that are literally on the 10-day DL. It's like if nobody has post-vaccine illness for 10 days. Unless you're in that weird 6% that get brain clots order from J&J. These people are getting sick from something else, and it probably is COVID. It might be a mild form of it, because those more serious forms of that. But to have this many people, last week we counted like 15 people out with illness. This week, I didn't go through all the players, but I named off 8 or 9. It's a very high amount. Now, maybe it is because they're getting a vaccine. The question I have is, why are they waiting until the second week of the season to get the vaccine? That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But the one thing that does make sense on this is that if you remember before the season, the owners pitched a plan that's not to wait a month to start the season, which probably would have been a decent idea. The players didn't counter because if they countered, then the plan that exists would no longer would be nullified under the law. And so they basically said, we don't like that, come back with something better, and then nothing ever happened. We probably shouldn't have been playing this first month. Hopefully things will be the one thing that stinks about April is the number of people out just being sick, and maybe it'll be over when we turn the page to May. And yes, there are people like different, and then there's different stuff there. Like I remember last week we talked about Lourdes Gurriel on one of the shows with Andy, and I had read that he had COVID. He actually had COVID, and that was from that was a tweet from a Blue Jays beat reporter, which I consider fairly decent, and she read that he had COVID-related illness. And it could be either one. We actually don't know. And then there was one team where like one guy said he had COVID-related illness, and the other 2 guys said, we don't want you to name our name because you can't. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff going on that's different. So the optimist in me says May will come around by May 10th. This will probably be behind us, and we'll be able to enjoy baseball. And I actually do think that because everyone's getting vaccinated, not just the players, but people on the outside, I could consider attending a game in like August and September. And I really wouldn't. I don't know if I'd want. The truth is, most games aren't full capacity anyway. And if I were to drive to a game, it would most likely be the Tampa Bay Rays. And in that stadium, 6 feet of social distancing is absolutely no issue whatsoever. And it's actually a nicer stadium than people let on. And it's beautiful in Florida. There's nothing like walking out of a 96-degree day with 72% humidity into a beautifully air-conditioned baseball stadium. It's actually better than seeing the beautiful grass on Wrigley Field or Fenway Park, because you get that sense of relief, like, oh, this is going to be nice. There was a time when, now central air is ubiquitous, but I'm old enough to remember when people had the window units and stuff, and we used to go to movies just to get out of the heat, see lots of lousy movies. Much rather go to a baseball game. I did want to take a second and talk about some of the players that I was high on this year and what you do with them. Do you cut them? Because I've got a lot of people, especially, there were 3 players that I got questions. Should I cut Tasker Hernandez? Should I cut Cory Cooper? Should I cut Devin Williams? Those are the 3 that I got from more than one person. And the answer to most of the things are no. Somebody postulated this. There's no hard and fast rule as to who you can cut. And what I say is that you can only cut a person for cause, which means that there has to be a substantial reason why this guy's situation on the 18th of April is substantially different than the situation was on the 1st of April. Like Eloy Jimenez, his situation is substantially different. He's gone for all but the last thing. And so The first rule, and this is why I said, like, if you could cut Devin Williams for TJ Antone, I would do it. But that's the only guy. The first rule of waiver wire to me is you only pick up a player, you only drop a player when you can get something better for it. Not the same, but something better. And TJ Antone is better because he's playing. But Teoscar Hernandez is one of those guys with the COVID illness, with legitimate COVID illness. And, going into the thing, I think he had 4 hits and 17 at bats, I think it was, with 1 home run, which, for a start of a season isn't great, but it isn't horrible. But he was probably sick during it. It wasn't like the day that he went under. It was the day that he caught it, because you don't know you have it for at least 48 hours, sometimes longer. And if there's incentive to keep it secret, you might keep it even secreter, even longer. But I wouldn't cut him. I still think that, I would buy him from people. I still think that he's the worst case scenario for him is he's a 250 hitter with 30 home runs, which is the best case scenario for a lot of people. No, the best case scenario for him is off the charts high, because he has 70 grade speed, and he could, he stole 8 bases last year. He could steal you 15 bases on top of the 30 home runs. And if he continued to hit the way he hit last year, the 250 average could be increased. And the truth is, if everything fell into place, he could be what you hope to get from Bryce Harper. Now, I think that's like a 10% chance, mind you. But if he's 85% of Bryce Harper and you drafted in the 6th round, that's a good deal. Cory Cooper is an interesting one because, I saw him get cut in the league, and I picked him up. And I'm much higher than Cory Cooper than most people are. But I was really excited about Cory Cooper last year because Cory Cooper has 2 things going for him. One is he's got this filthy slider, cutter pitch. My friend, my ex, well, whatever. Somebody I used to do some things with fantasy-wise, Doug Thorburn would call it the slidra. It's a pitch that has like 5 different ways that it can come at you. Tough pitch. But the other thing that he has always had was he always started the season slow. And part of that was because I believe it's because he's a Texas boy. He's a Florida kid. And he didn't like the cold. And I know a lot of people like that. And so in the cold weather games in Cleveland, he would do fairly poorly. I think that 6 out of 7 years, we had the argument on the 3rd week of the season: should I be benching Kluber? Should I be cutting Kluber? And then by the end of the year, a couple of years he won the Cy Young, and a couple of years I don't think he's going to be that good. I have no doubt that he's going to be the 2nd best pitcher on the Yankees this year. And this is the thing. In the first game, the thing that was scary was the fastball velocity was around 89.5 miles an hour. And, there was a little bit of drop off with a lot of people. Bieber had a drop off in Detroit because of the cold, right? The second game he went in, he got hit pretty hard too. His fastball velocity jumped to a little over 90. It was 90.5. In the 3rd game, his average velocity was over 91.5. He was hitting 93, 94. He got beat up pretty strong in two innings, but he had a 50% strike rate. The things that are underlying in Kluber, I still like. I wish I had benched him for the first 3 weeks. I wish I had, because it's something we just sort of know. But he's going to have some very good weeks for you and have a very good season. And I really, based on what I see on the Yankees pitching staff, he's going to be the 2nd best pitcher on that team behind Garrett Cole. Oh, Facebook user. I got this one here. Facebook user, how about Kutch any value? I guess you come across this Facebook user if you don't register yourself on StreamYard, and this person isn't, and that's fine. You can be anonymous. It's a perfectly wonderful question. I have faith in. And then he asked. I think it's the same guy. He asked about Castanera. All right. I don't see anything wrong with McCutchen. McCutchen's going to give you what he's going to give you, and I do believe it's going to be good stuff for you. He bats first because there's great on base percentage on that team, and he's going to score runs. He's going to hit you, whatever, 24, 25 home runs. He's going to score a decent number of runs. He's going to steal you 8 or 10 bases. But that's what you drafted him for. And at this point, I don't have any reason to think that he's not going to do that. Is the only things in his way. It's not like Philadelphia's got a plethora of outfielders to play in his place. The only thing standing in the way is himself, and not himself from what he can do with the bat, but himself in the sense that he's got to stay healthy. Castanera is a different story. Castanera falls in that category of minor league hitters that I really like. I like the guys that have strong bat-to-ball skills, and they come along and they do some really and he's got enough power to back it up too, more than most. But every now and then, I mean, like a prospect can do one of three things. They can come up and be good, they can take a while to figure it out, or they can never figure it out. And trying to remember the guy who was the prospect about 7 years ago for the Seattle Mariners. Everyone was just nuts about second baseman, great bat the ball skills. He actually wound up having a 7 or so year career. He was drafted really high, but it never really worked out for him. That could happen. I got to check this out because nope, that's it. Castanera, I believe, is going to be a hitter. In my Dynasty League, I owned him. I did trade him going down the stretch for some pitching help 2 years ago. Yeah, but I did regret it. I thought to myself, said, man, I wish I had him. Is he going to figure it out this year? The jury's out on that. It's 50-50. He's going to have some moments that you're going to really love, and he's going to have some moments you really hate. The Milwaukee Brewers team is bad enough on the hitting side that barring hitting 135 for an extended period of time, he's going to get a chance to work through it. And because they need a first baseman, they need a second baseman. They're playing guys like Jace Peterson and Travis Shaw. Chris Yelich is out. They need hitters, so he's going to fight things out. What do I think he's going to do? It's hard to predict the future. I would say that that you're sitting at a point where it's too early right now to cut bait on Hira. It's about 50-50 whether he does something pretty good for you or he does something that's not so good. I'm not 100% sure. If he's eligible at first base, he has more value than if he's eligible at second base. And he would be the kind of player that if I had him at second base, I would bench him for one of these other second basemen that are out there that are just doing better right now. I know I talked about Jed Lowry last week. I would bench Hira for Lowry. At first base, it's not as deep. And though there are guys that I would bench him for, like Joey Votto, but we'll get to that later. So, yeah. My guess is that Hira is going to figure it out eventually. The question is whether he'll figure it out this year. He's your only second base in your league? How deep is that league? How deep is that league? Is there... I'm going to jump down because you're asking this question. I like it. When I cut Hira for Lowry. When you cut a player, the question you have to ask yourself is, it's 8 teams. Yeah, no, do it. 18 league. I play in a 10-team league, and there's a much different level of quality you have to be in order to be useful in a 10-team league. You can't just be good. You have to be very good. And you can sometimes, rotate in a few players that are hot, but you don't have the luxury of waiting for things. If you had bench space, I can understand it. But the question you ask yourself when you're deciding who you're going to cut, and this is beyond the idea that you shouldn't be cutting players just quite yet, unless there's a good reason, is when it comes down to who you're going to cut, you should look at the guy and go, is this somebody that someone else will pick up? And the reason why I was arguing against cutting Hira beforehand was because in a 12-team league and a 15-team league, he's going to be swiped up by somebody. So when you cut him, he's lost to you. Whereas in 18 league, if you cut him, he's going to be sitting on that waiver wire until he heats up, and maybe maybe you could be the guy who buys him back if that thing happens this year. And I think that a lot with players. When I cut, when I cut Johnny Cueto 2 weeks ago, because I wanted to get, he had a bad first start. I still liked him, but I thought to myself, I'm going to buy this guy back in the future. And then he had a great start in the second thing, and they became a thing. And the amount of money I put aside to buy him back wasn't enough because somebody paid $159 for him in a 1,000-point fab league. And I thought to myself, said, man, I'd like Cueto, but I like the fact that I got the guy to use up $160 on him better. But it's one of your things. Like, if he's a guy that you want and he's in the cut pile, you should have a strategy for that guy. These things is put some money aside, save your spot. Go to Google Alerts and put in an alert under that guy's name so you get every mention of him. It's just sent to your email in the morning as I check in the morning. But that's the sort of thing that I would go with. Going back to going back to these guys that I was high on. Everyone knows I was high on David Price. And then he's a guy that I cut for cause. He's not a starter as a reliever. He's not really worth that much. Funny thing is, I'm in this draft and hold league where I picked him up at, and because he had a save and a win this week, he's my second best pitcher this week, behind only two-start Yu Darvish. So he'll probably pop up in your list of top pitchers because he had a really fantastic week that was fluky as hell. I would keep an eye on him because he's a guy that when it comes down to it and he gets back into the starting rotation, he's gonna give you some good starts. But he's a guy I cut on purpose. I cut Johnny Cueto. I was a big fan of waiting at third base, saying that there was Justin Turner, Josh Donaldson, Chris Bryant available super late, and Justin Turner has done good stuff. I want with him more often than not because for some reason other people are higher on Bryant and Donaldson. Donaldson, the jury's out on him. What you've seen from him so far is that when he's healthy, he's been good, but he hasn't really been healthy. And Bryant has shown signs of life. There were moments you look at him and you see the MVP guy for a couple of years. In the outfield, very deep, I talked about Teoscar Hernandez, but I had Adam Duvall and Anthony Alford. Anthony Alford he's a guy that you can cut for cause. It seems like he's lost out the center field job to Dustin Fowler in Pittsburgh, but Adam Duvall is doing exactly what I expected him to do. Hit some home runs and have some days where he makes a lot of outs. But the home runs will outweigh the outs over time. There's that whole first base thing I was saying about. Like at third base, I said you could wait on these three. At first base, I said you could wait on these five guys because they're all going to be decent players. Jared Walsh, Bobby Dahlbeck, Brandon Belt, Mitch Moreland, and Andrew Vaughn. Andrew Vaughn gets the day off in left field today for Jake Lamb. I think Andrew Vaughn is a guy that you should really consider trading because you're going to cut him in a week or two, unless you have a minor slot or something along those lines. He's not doing himself any good not hitting in the majors. He definitely won't be doing himself any good not playing in the majors. And considering the future that they need to have, 3 weeks gaining some confidence getting some confidence at the plate and getting some time playing left field would be a good thing. Just like if you get benched for Rougned Odor, you should retire. If you get benched for Jake Lamb, if you weren't 20 years old, you should consider retiring. But any of those guys, I mean, Moreland plays every day. He hasn't done much yet so far, but he's been good in the past. Belt, I'll go into more detail on this. Belt hits against the righties, bench for Flores against the lefties. Dahlbeck is a weird one because if you break down the way he's been hitting the ball hard. Sorry, he's been hitting the ball with not as hard as you'd expect, but his sweet spot percentage is high, which means he's getting the right angle, but he's not hitting the ball hard enough, which is weird for a guy like Dahlbeck. And the only narrative that I can think that makes sense in is that he had a really bad first couple of games, so he's really concentrating on hitting the ball. And he's hitting the ball well, but in concentrating on hitting the ball, He's not swinging with reckless abandon or with full power, and that's something that could change a little bit. And then, of course, on the other side of the coin, everybody was high on Jose Abreu, and I'm not going to say cut that guy. I own him in a league. I own him in that draft and hold league. And you know how many points he got me for this week? He got me 0 points. He got outplayed by Brandon Belt. But I think it's going to come around. That's what you got to do with these things. I'm going to take a moment in the chat room. Somebody asks, anyone like Michael Fulmer? You know, Mike, I had that list of middle relievers I thought could be really dominating, and I had Fulmer on that list. And then he became a starter. And the truth is, he was he was former rookie of the year. There's no reason to think that he can't pitch this thing through. I don't have my Michael Fulmer pitcher. He had a really good first outing. The strikeouts were a little bit down. He is pitching today, which is going to be a thing. If you're going into Fab today, if he has a great outing, he's going to be a guy that people are going to want. If he has a mediocre outing, I don't know. But I think that there is, in a 10 or 12 team league, I don't think he's good enough for that. But if you're in a 15 team league, he's a guy that you definitely should look at. As long as we're talking about pitchers, I'll talk about a few of these pitchers. That are, it's like, would I want Michael Fulmer more than these guys who I think are available? Everyone was really kind of talking up Wasker Inoa. I think they're pretty similar. I know Andrea had picked up Taylor Widener. He had a couple good outings. He actually had the other side on the no-hitter in one of those games, and he pitched very well in that. Would I take him over Tyler Widener? I don't think that's good enough. Kohei Arihara of the Rangers available. He pitched pretty well. He's kind of got lost in the shuffle. Oftentimes these guys from Asia come over and pitch well to start out. He's actually had the opposite thing. It's like his first outing in the spring training was god awful, and then the rest of it was pretty good, but the numbers still looked awful. Koyara, after the first outing, letting up, I think, over 10 runs. Well, no, ERA over 10. His last two outings have been what I sort of expected from Koyara. Would I take Fulmer over Arihara? Yes, I would take Fulmer over Arihara. The two guys on Kansas City, Jake Junis and Danny Duffy, I would take Danny Duffy over Fulmer. That's a guy that I would take over Fulmer. And if you're playing in one of my leagues, I probably have a fab bid in for Danny Duffy. And my fab bid is $3,000. So go ahead, take him from me. Bet $3,001. No, he's more like a $1, $100. He's more like I don't really know, $5 player, something like that. $6 if you really want him, $7. And that translates to $50, $60, $70 in a 1,000 league. In the shorter leagues, these are guys I definitely would rather have than Michael Fulmer. Anthony DeScalfini, he's looked very good in his outings in the Giants. And actually been watching more Giants games. And because they're a fun team to watch by comparison to the Yankees. Dane Dunning looks pretty good. Looks really good is Joe Rawson with the I know it's only one game, but with the injury to Strasburg, he's going to be in that lineup. And then JT Brubaker of the Pirates is somebody to look at. Those are all. I would take Brubaker over Fulmer. I would take Joe Ross over Fulmer. I picked up Wade Miley. I would pick him up over Fulmer. Dane Dunning. So, yeah, Fulmer is definitely a guy. I think he's gonna be a decent pitcher, but I don't know if he rises to the. All the elites should be taken and played. All the very good players should be taken. All the good players. That's where you're at in most leagues. There are good players on the waiver wire. Michael Fulmer, I think, falls in that category, and if you don't think he's one, then I think you're wrong about that. I feel better about this week's show. I decided that I would allow myself freedom to move around and just jump on things that I saw here and there. What was it? Oh, I did want to bring this came from just that conversation there. We watched the last couple games between San Diego and the Dodgers, and they were just some of the most fun middle of the season baseball that I've seen in a while. Matter of fact, I don't think there's been a better series played, you know, in the third week of the season than that. I've seen similar things, in September, but in the third week of the season, that's kind of crazy. But the point being is, it's something I've known for a long time, but I think that people are finally kind of getting around to it, is that West Coast baseball is more interesting than East Coast baseball. The Yankees and the Red Sox may be good at times, but they're tired. They're dull. You watch these teams out there. I mean, don't get me wrong. The Colorado Rockies, when I was playing DFS, I would watch the Rockies game all the time, and they were horrible for many of those years. But yet, it's a fun game to watch. The Giants are a fun team to watch. The Dodgers and the Padres it goes without saying. We're in a moment. I mean, the Angels have Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout. The Oakland A's are a weird team because they play their own style of baseball, but they do a good job of it. They do a lot of platooning, a lot of this guy back there, but they're a good team. In Seattle, admittedly, right this minute might not be the biggest thing in the world, but they got a lot of young players like Ty France, Evan White, Taylor Trammell, Kyle Lewis, people on the make that are coming soon, like Jared Kelenic, Logan Gilbert, their pitcher. Even Julio Rodriguez. It's like I'll take that. Rangers, they're a team that I could take or leave. The Royals, they make these moves in the offseason, and they're strategic moves to get guys like Michael Taylor and Carl Santana on the cheap, and then they get this funnel of great pitching coming up, with guys like Singer and Bubic and who's the other guy's name? Daniel Lynch. There's a lot to like there. The White Sox, the Twins. On the West Coast, you got some really nice things. You got Juan Soto in Washington. You got Acuna in Atlanta. But the teams that everybody watches, including my Cubs, Boston, Yankees, Atlanta, aren't as good as what you see on the West Coast. So I think that the world will be a better place because the people who run the program. One of the reasons why you always see New York and Boston on TV is because at one point, almost all of the sports broadcasters, the sports writers, sports reporters were based out of that area. And so they were their teams. They were the guys they could see every day. But it's not like that anymore. And the truth, and I think that with a year of remote work where people didn't go to stuff, for a year, the guys that were reporting, instead of being at Yankee Stadium, they were watching the game on TV the same way they were watching Mike Trout, the same way they were watching a game in Coors Field. I think they realized that there's something out there, and that's a good thing. There's some things to note through the lineups. I just put down things I thought were important. Some of these might come up again. Josh Rojas, even though he's not been hitting, has got his fifth game at second base on Friday. Ozzie Albies has been dropped in the lineup from the second position into fifth and sometimes deeper. They moved him behind Ozuna and Arnaud. Arnaud is their fourth batter now. He's one of those guys where his splits are so bad that he probably should stop batting right-handed. You see what that's done for Cedric Mullins. That's something I'd like to hear from Ozzie Albies. Just bat lefty. Or maybe have it reversed. He hits well from one side. I think it's from the left side. Tyler Naquin started today, but he only played 2 games last week. Sogard plays more second base than David Boat. As I said, with the Dodgers, Lux and Polk out with injuries. Betts had a day off. Belly was on the AL. There is this thing about the Los Angeles Dodgers that's of note. It's like that team is so good that all their players are going to get days off. There's just no need to play them, and there's no need to rush somebody back. And Bellinger has a hairline fracture in his leg, and that just means that Zach McKinstry starts more. And Zach McKinstry has been playing well. The guy behind him, Luke Raley, is batting 500. I know it's only like 6 at bats, but it seems like they do this. They just do this all the time. They pick up these guys and they do well. Garrett Cooper played 4 games, rotating in for the Marlins. Twice for Aguilera, once for Dickerson, once for Duvall. It's just interesting to note. I think there's going to be I think there's sort of a 3-person informal platoon between Dickerson, Aguilar, and Cooper. Today in the Marlins lineup, they have Aguilar and Cooper in the lineup for the first time, and Dickerson sat. It's one of those things where if you take you want the guy that plays. I'm big on Duvall, and I'd rather him play all the time. But it's something to watch down there. I was big on last week on picking up Jonathan Villar because he's the more talented player. Apparently, the Mets are playing Guillorme over Villar. I think it's because their defense is so bad. It's nice to have a good fielder in there. Now, Villar is a average to below average fielder. He's not horrible, but Guillorme is stellar, and it's nice to have one of those guys. As what you said, it looks like Moniak, Halesley playing center for Philadelphia is out on the restricted list, personal reasons, and Quinn and Moniak are looks like they're platooning. That's actually a perfectly good situation for Quinn if you're a Quinn owner, because you don't want to bat too much. Just give him an opportunity to steal bases, because if he's on base 4 times, he's going to try to steal 3 times. Big if, though. Phillip Evans batting second today for the Pirates. He's a guy that I'm bigger on than most people are. He's played pretty well. No reason to see this thing coming, but he played well for the Pirates last year, and he's been playing well enough here. He's they've actually started him 3 games in the outfield, once in right, twice in left. I think that the Pirates are trying to make room for him to play when Brian Haynes returns, and the odd man out in my mind would be Polanco, but you never know. JT Brubaker. Yeah, I talked about him briefly in there. It's like the only thing holding me back from Brubaker is the fact that I'm the Pirates. I play in mostly win leagues, and I think that's tough there. I'm trying to remember who it was that I had talked to before the season. It was really high on the Pirates pitching, and it was just the weirdest thing in the world. But Brubaker was the guy that he liked. And if you watch the game, he looks like a pitcher out of Central Casting. It's a nice, clean, easy motion. I like Brubaker, but I don't know if he's 12-team relevant yet. If he were available in the 15-team league I'm in, I would probably go for him. I'd probably go for him over Danny Duffy. It's marginal, not a whole lot more than Danny Duffy, but yeah. But he's owned, and there's something to be said for these guys being owned in the 15-team leagues. And it's crazy how the ownership difference is a thing, because like everybody's favorite Travis Shaw, one of my least favorite guys, he's like 7% owned in Yahoo and 79% owned on NFC, because they play deeper rosters, deep everything. That's a huge difference, and that's the difference you're talking between things. Brubaker is startable. Yeah, he's definitely a guy that I'd pick up the stream. I mean, if you have Strasburg out, he might be the best pitcher out there. There might be better ones. I'm trying to remember who else I named as pitchers that were out there. But Joe Ross, Wade Miley's out there. DeSclafini's out there. These are widely available guys. These are guys that are available 50% or more teams. There might be somebody even better out there in your league, depending on how your league is going. There might be Cory Cooper out there. Did I do something wrong? All I can tell you about, that was the first thing I looked at, Strasburg on the IL. Oh, good. It wasn't something I said. Like I didn't insult her with my Brubaker. thing. The only thing I can tell you about Brubaker is what I saw. What I saw, because he was playing the Cubs, I thought he looked like a good pitcher. You know, I didn't really go into the great details on it, which is something I will do. I got a text message from my old partner. Remember Brendan from the old Dugout days? I don't know what it means, but it was something baseball related. I'll have to look up. Yes, he's back on the IL. Josh Harrison is a little bit hurt. But he's batting fifth for the the Nationals, and that's an important spot. Victor Robles has been moved down to ninth with the return of Schwarber, and that hurts Robles a lot. Tony Pham appears to be benched in San Diego in favor of Profar. I mean, Pham will get some playing time, but that's it. Belt is going to hit versus righties, Flores versus lefties, and eventually. Interesting one is that in Baltimore, G.J. Stewart is playing outfield and Mountcastle is playing DH, which must say something about D.J. Stewart's health and about Mountcastle's ability to play outfield. D.J. Stewart's a guy that's widely available in deep leagues and might be worth it. In Boston, the team that I said we don't like to watch, they're crazy about Enrique Hernandez in center field, and what that has done is it's created their second baseman of choice, at least recently, has been Christian Arroyo, and that ain't very good. It might be in a situation if they're stuck on Enrique Hernandez playing center field, you might look right at the Super 2 moment for Jeter Downs to come up. So he might be a guy that you might want to stash. I can't believe that Christian Arroyo famously was the number one prospect in the San Francisco Giants system when they had traded away all their good players and had one of the worst minor league systems in history. That's the only I remember him. They traded him to Tampa for Matt Duffy, or the other way around. I don't know, but it was just a bunch of scrub players. He wasn't very good, but he'll always have that. He was the number one system. He was the number one prospect in the Giant system when they had absolutely nobody. Now their system's pretty good. They've rebuilt it. Yadi Molina is batting cleanup hitter and seemed to be hitting pretty well. Tim Anderson's return to the lineup, which is a good thing for Tim Anderson owners, is a bad thing for Luis Robert owners because Luis Robert falls just to deep in the lineup, batting either 6th or 7th. Ahmed Rosario played his 5th game in the outfield, which means he should have outfield eligibility in many leagues, and he's well on his way to getting 10 games. And it also means that both guys that they traded Linda for, Jimenez and Rosario, are playing, which makes that trade seem a little better for Cleveland. Houston has all the COVID people. We already talked about Badu and Nunez getting in. Cal Isbell, a rookie that I was pretty high on, who's one of those good bat-the-ball guys, hasn't been playing recently. He hasn't played 3 games in the outfield. They've been sort of rotating guys through there. Solar got 1 game in the outfield, where Solar played an outfield game. Jared Walsh, 5 games in the outfield. He's probably eligible in your leagues now. He's well on his way. They have no good solution for Jose Rendon. The team likes, I called John Jay being the replacement guy, right? But they moved him down, and the new outfielder is going to be Scott Schebler. But their third base in place of Rendon, Mayfield's a good fielder. They like Jose Rojas, but from a fan standpoint, nothing is worthwhile. Buxton's out for 4 games with an injury. In Minnesota, interesting positional lineup platoon is that Luis Arias seems to be batting leadoff versus righties, and when lefties come in, Mitch Garver bats leadoff. Rugi has played every day since Jay Bruce has come in. Mitch Moreland returned from injury, and you're going to see a situation with the A's where Piscotty, Moreland, and Seth Brown split time, but Moreland's a guy that if you look at their lineup, he's a guy that except for the time that he was injured, he's a guy that seems like they have preference to play. And he bats fifth. A couple of cleanup hitters that you may not care about because they're not that good, but still, they're outfielders, and we don't know. It's Jose Marmoleos in Seattle and Adalis Garcia in Texas. The nice thing about the Garcia call-up is that it's moved David Dahl to DH. David Dahl's always been a guy who can hit, and maybe it's one of those situations where he can stay healthier if he doesn't play the field. I mean, he's actually athletic enough to play center field, but if he doesn't play the field, maybe he can stay and play 120 games. Both guys are, Marmoleos and Garcia, are viable in those really deep leagues. Yoshi Tsugo blew his chance at the leadoff hitter. He hasn't hit well enough, and so they moved Meadows to leadoff. And if you look at it closely, the guy that they've put in place of Tsugo, who's a guy that's actually pretty good, is a guy by the name of Mike Brousseau. A couple years ago, where's my Brousseau notes? Right, in 2019, our first thing, Brousseau has first base, second base, third base eligibility, even on NFBC. And he had 273 with 6 home runs and 130 at bats with 1 stolen base in 2019. That was solid. He's just one of those guys that kind of got, I can't remember who it was the really great player that year. Was it Meadows or whatever? It's like everybody on that team has to get benched sometime, but he was a guy that kind of fell beneath the other guys. Last year was Brandon Lowe's year to be the center of every attention. Last year, in 86 at bats, he stole 2 bases with 5 home runs, and he batted like 304, I think. And there's people are scared of that team because of the way that they screw around with their lineups. But I think that Brousseau is a guy that you should be aware of. He's a pickup in deep leagues, especially in American League deep leagues, because as long as he's performing, and he is actually hitting a little bit, he's definitely hitting better than Tsugo. He'd be in there, and he actually is a guy that can help you in home runs and steals. And the other guy is Joey Wendell, who seems to be playing a lot too, because he's playing third base. And those guys were kind of avoided, even though they really aren't 12-team, 10-team, important. But in those deeper leagues and in your AL only kind of guys, like these guys are, and Brousseau's ahead of the pack. Pick him up in your AL league if no one's got him. Another guy in the American League that is in that same category, that even though I like him a lot, I'm a little bit, is that Charlie Culberson has been playing third base. Matter of fact, he's starting today at shortstop because Brock Holt got activated. Both those guys are guys that both those guys, Brock Holt and Culberson. Culberson's a guy that 2 years ago or 3 years ago he was my fill-in shortstop after my shortstop got injured for the last half of the season for the Braves. And he actually played those times. It wasn't like he was lying. And he was a pretty good player. He hit like 12 home runs, batted 279, and it was only in like a couple of months that he did that. He's on that list of players I'd like to see get more playing time. So Andrea says, Conforto and Maqueta stink. I guess it sucks. Who cares? I don't know the context for that, but more power to you. No matter how bad they are, it's April. There are a few on the pitching side. I go through the closers. There are a few interesting new pitchers this week that don't normally say. We talked about Huascar Noah had that first game that was pretty good. The second one wasn't there. Peralta versus the Cubs had 10 strikeouts. He's probably not available in those things. Trevor Cahill pitched 5 innings of 1-run 8K ball versus San Diego, and that's the thing about the Pittsburgh stuff. It's like those Pittsburgh pitchers. It's some of them are going to do some good things. Cahill was one of those guys that I actually thought, with all their injuries and stuff, that he might be pushing for the closer role. He was, every time I've seen Cahill in relief, he's looked really, really awesome. As a starter, he's erratic and strikes out a lot of people. On Tuesday, Zach Collins returned, looked okay, a little short of an outing, but that's what you expected. Kyle Gibson looks like he's raiding the ship. 2 weeks ago, we talked about him being the worst guy in baseball. Just say no to Matt Moore. Alec Mills pitched versus the Brewers. 4 innings, 2 earned runs. He's a guy like before season. No walks, no strikeouts. He didn't like that. He let up 2 home runs to Luis Urias. Wednesday, TJ Zoich came in and he stunk. He's a guy that actually had on. I had him in a dynasty league, but I traded him away. On that one, I traded him away for a cause. I mean, I didn't really want him. And Michael Fulmer had 5 innings pitched, allowed 2 runs, 3 hits, 1 walk, 1 home run, 2 strikeouts. You wish strikeouts would be higher, but that's what you wanted from him. His first time pitching in quite a while. You can't expect much more than that. There's reason to be forward thinking on that. Anthony Kay did not look good versus Kansas City. Kyle Wright versus the Cubs. They actually optioned Kyle Wright to the alternate site today. He had 4 batters. That's the thing that was really worrisome. 4 batters in 4.1 innings. Though he did pitch well enough to win that game. Not that he got the wins, he didn't pitch enough, but Logan Allen was in. Daniel Castano was the spot starter for the Miami Marlins. He pitched 5 innings, let up 1 run, 5 base runners. Eddie Sclafani's worth a pickup in most leagues. I mean, I've been watching a lot of Giants games, and Gausman looks really, really awesome. To the point where, I might actually think of ways to trade for him. But Sclafani looks good across the board. That team, I mean, where does he fit? There's lots of pitchers I'd rather have than him, but not. Let me see here. I know that he's owned in every league I'm in, so I'm going to go to one of my teams. My team roster. So here's my like I said, I picked up Wade Miley. I would have picked up DeSclafani ahead of him had he been available. I like Carlos Rodon better. I like Zach Gallen better. I keep those guys. Adam Wainwright. I would take Sclafani over Adam Wainwright. Cory Cooper, I told you I still like him. I would start Steve Sclafani over Cooper, but I would not cut him. And then I have Strasburg and another injured pitcher. Yeah, I like Sclafani. He was fantasy useful on the Reds a couple years ago, and then he kind of fell off the edge of the world for some unknown reason. And the Giants have been good at looking at pitchers that have good all around, mechanics, good all around numbers. We're not talking the greatest guys on the planet, but are guys that are showstoppers, and just making them solid pitchers. I'm staying away from Mize. The comment says, I'm staying away from Mize, let someone else take the risk. Before the season, there were these 3 guys that had roughly the same story, which was high pedigree, high strikeout potential, erratic playing up to this point. And I couldn't really say which one I wanted the most out of, but the 3 names were Carlos Rodon, Casey Mize, and Dylan Cease. The other part about that is they had distinct improvements during the spring training that you're saying maybe that carries over. And in most leagues, I was stuck getting the one that I wound up with. So I wound up with Rodon in 2 leagues and Mize in a 3rd. And as good as Mize was in the minors, and it's 2 years out now, mind you, but like when Casey Mize was in the minors, when Casey Mize was with the Gators, he was awesome. When Casey Mize was in the minors, it was like that thing you hear these stories about, like Jack Leiter's kid with 2 no-hitters. Like, he was always flirting with no-hitter in the minors. Now, don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean you're going to be always flirting with no-hitter in the majors, but there's something real here. And to discount the guy that could have been the best pitching prospect in baseball last year because he had a few bad outings in a very awkward year was going to be. I drafted him in the draft and hold league just for that reason. I think that that Mize is going to have some phenomenal games. He's going to have a few stinkers too. But all in all, he's definitely going to be worth what you've paid for him at this point. I kind of like just talking. It's been an hour and 11 minutes. I'll go through the closers real quick, and then I'll quickly go through my waiver things, and we'll be done in 90 minutes. In the closer situation, a few things of note. In Toronto, Merriweather and Romano with the DL. Rafael Doles is the guy. I still like David Phelps. He's the guy behind him in my mind. Class A had 2 saves this week with Cleveland. He seems to be asserting himself. Brian Garcia got a save in Detroit, none for Soto, so it looks like they're leaning a little bit that way. I still think Soto's the better pitcher, and we don't really know yet. In Kansas City, on Sunday, they gave the save to Zimmer. On Tuesday, they gave it to Holland. On Thursday, they gave it to Scott Barlow. Jesse Hahn did go to the IL. That is a true committee if I ever saw one, and it's going to stay away. In Minnesota, Alex Colomé blew 2 saves this week. Taylor Rogers is probably owned in your league, but he's the guy that you want, and he should be owned if he's not. You should check on that one. Colomé is not long for that spot. Lou Trevino has established himself with 2 saves in Oakland. In Seattle, they gave the last 2 saves to Graveman with Montero pitching the 8th in the last one, so the pecking order there seems to be Graveman. Ian Kennedy got 1 save. He's clearly the guy in Texas. Yimi Garcia, who for the first time in his career converted 2 consecutive saves in the same year, which got to applause to Yimi. I still have my doubts whether he's no doubt the closer right now, and I think he'll keep it for a little while. I just don't think he's that good of a pitcher. And I don't. The one thing he has going for him is they don't really have that great of guys behind him. The guy that I think, if I were the manager, I would start Dylan Floro as my closer. But I'm not. I think there might be somebody who's not even on the roster yet, somebody in their minors that might be the best bet there. Yeah, we should be able to pick some. In Cincinnati, just when you thought Amir Garrett was the guy, Lucas Sims got his first save opportunity, and the Diamondbacks, who we're not 100% sure of, had no save opportunities this week. So that's it. In the pickups for the week, the big guys are going to be Dolis and Graveman, and I would as much as I like Graveman as the pitcher, I would probably take Dolis because the path is clear, and if you're going to wind up spending the kind of money it takes to get a relief pitcher in a fab league, you'd want that guy to not be the closer for only 3 weeks. But either one of those guys is a very good pickup. And then if your league happens to have one of the guys from last week, like Trevino or Clase, still floating around, you should pick those guys up. But the 2 big ones are going to be that. The hitters. All right, I'll get to my recommendations on players. Right, these are based on. They're based on what I say. Shallow league, I'm talking about Yahoo. When I'm saying deep league, I'm talking about at first base. There are a lot of guys that are available in Yahoo that are under 40% owned, and Joey Votto said before this week that he was going to try to hit more home runs, and he had 3 home runs this week. He's a guy that can do whatever he do. He's only owned in 70% of leagues. I think he is my number 1 guy, even more than Brandon Belt. But Brandon Belt's up there, 19%. Colin Moran, 39%. Those are the guys I like. There are these other guys that people talk about a little bit, like Travis Shaw, Jesus Aguilar, Rowdy Tellez, Heimer Candelaria. There's, Tellez. I worry about what happens. He's fine until Tasker and Springer get back, but once they're at full strength, if they're ever at full strength, there's going to be a problem there, and I think he's the short end of the stick. Aguilar, same thing. I think there's a little bit of playing time issue there. Heimer Candelario had like a 376, 372 BABIP last year. This year is a 364. There's things about it there are things about his hitting style that I hate when people say the BABIP is just luck, but he's had a little bit of fortune. There's no doubt. And the difference between last year, where he had a really nice little year with a 362 BABIP, and this year is that he's hitting. Last year, he hit 17% more fly balls than ground balls. This year, he's hitting 20% more ground balls than fly balls. With the ground balls, his BABIP should be higher, but not as productive. So I think that with that 364 isn't going to translate long term. And these guys say it. So that's why I would go Votto, Belt, Moran. In the deeper leagues, we talked to Brousseau, and then Mitch Moreland's the other guy. Those are the guys in the deep leagues. Mitch Moreland, just to give you he's had a slow start in 2019, but sorry, a slow start so far this year, but in 2019 he hit 19 home runs in under 300 at bats. Then he would have had a phenomenal year, but he got traded to San Diego, and there was no place for him to play. Last year he had 10 home runs and 175 at bats. What was the answer to the question of the day? I didn't give a question of the day. What was the question of the day? I guess it's something for one of the people listening. All right, he's only hitting 212 now, but he had an injury and he's back from the injury. And since the injury return, he's 3 for 9. Now, I know you can't say anything about batting 333 and 9 at bats, but with these sorts of things, you have to hit beforehand than that. I don't understand how somebody would pick Travis Shaw over Mitch Moreland. Matter of fact, you should have more respect for yourself than to roster Travis Shaw. I understand AL only or national only leagues where everyone's rosterable, but in any other league, it's like going back and sleeping with your ex-wife. It relieves a need for about 25, 30 minutes, but then you're messed up with all that crap that you were just so lucky to be away from. Stay away from it. You deserve better than Travis Shaw. Take it from me, Doug Boyle. At second base, Jazz Chisholm is really, before the season, I said I like the guy, but I wasn't sure if this was the year. It looks like he's putting everything together faster than that. We missed out on what their development was last year. I know he played the pros and he hit like 170, but right now everything's clicking for the guy. He's 55% owned. In the 50 range, you have Jed Lowry at 58%. Andres Jimenez, who I like the least of the three, believe it or not, at 57%. Though with the multiple eligibility and his capacity to steal bases, there might be a specific thing. If you need stolen bases, you go with Jimenez. On the lower end, even in the deep, Josh Harrison and Luis Urias. Oh, sorry, before you get to that, in the deep side, Mike Brousseau, I'm going to say it on every position, 34% owned on NFBC, plays second base. And Freddie Galvis, he's going to play all the time in second in Baltimore. He's one of those Cesar Hernandez types. He just puts up these okay numbers. And if you're really desperate for second baseman, you're just looking for somebody playing time, that's the guy. I don't have the problem at second base. I have the problem at shortstop. And the guy that I would recommend in deep leagues for shortstop still is Jose Iglesias. And, Galvis is in that ballpark range. The only other choice would be to the only other choice at second base would be to like play the long game for someone like Nico Horner or Brendan Rodgers for a little thing. Chris Owings. They say that Chris Owings he's not going to come back when he's first available. They're going to give him time. Might be longer than we thought, but I still think it's going to be less than a couple of weeks. I don't know how the hell Garrett Hampson is 7% owned. That's a crazy thing. If you want stolen bases, he's just a bad hitter. Third base, there's a lot of people in there. I think Evan Longoria at 20% is somebody that's about right. He wasn't expected to be like the full-time third baseman. I think it's the primary reason why they signed LaStella. He just played well so far at the beginning of the season, and they'll keep playing him as long as he's playing well. But I think when they think of their ideal lineup in San Francisco, Longoria is not their third baseman. I think LaStella is. Or could they do that? There's the one thing that they could do, which is Brandon Crawford is an elite fielder. He's their shortstop in San Francisco, but Solano played shortstop a little bit. He was in Miami. You kind of moved between the two. Though Hechevarria played shortstop more often. They could try Solano at shortstop. I'm not sure how good a fielder is, and that's something I'm going to look at in the thing, because their best line would probably be Belt at first, LaStella at second, Solano at short, and Longoria at third base, and then you would probably late in the game pull LaStella out, bring in Crawford for defensive purposes. Got to look at that more closely. But at third base, Ty France only 53% owned. Phillip Evans, 46. That's my Phillip Evans. Yandy Diaz at 34%. He's been hitting a lot of ground balls. Also hits the ball hard. But there's nobody in there I love except for I love Ty France, and I like what I see in Phillip Evans and Mike Brousseau. At shortstop, Joey Wendell is the only guy that I really Donovan Solano. He actually qualifies at shortstop in Yahoo. And the deep leagues, you're looking at Galvis and Iglesias. We might be getting near the time you start thinking about parking Bobby Witter and Nico Horner. The outfield is weird. They're. I mean, when you talk about this, you want to talk about guys that people should pick up, but then you look at there's guys that are just like no brainers. Like Cole Calhoun's only 20% owned in Yahoo, and he's literally a starting outfielder in 10-team leagues. Well, sorry, there'd be 5 outfield. He's not a 3. And then so he's number 1. But then you get these other guys like Pedro Martinez is the answer to the question of the day. Willie Calhoun is in the lineup today for the Rangers. He's an upside play, really good hitter theoretically. Could be Keston Hiura-ish. Matter of fact, very Keston Hiura-ish. But there's a chance that he could explode, and that's something he could be a little ahead of the curve on unless he's already owned somewhere. I like what Jackie Brantley Jr. has been doing batting-wise since he's moved to center field. Manny Margot is only owned in 20% of leagues. Oh, Jurickson Profire. So it's Calhoun's 1, Profire is 2. I think that Profire is a player. Nimmo, the leadoff hitter for the Mets, is 42% owned. There's some decent choices there. In the deeper leagues, Zach McKinstry is a temporary fix. He's going to play a lot as long as Bellinger's out. Play a little less when Bellinger comes back. DJ Stewart, like I said, he's playing the outfield and he's batting second. Adolis Garcia, Jose Marmoleos. One of the early, as much as the Red Sox like Enrique Hernandez in center field, I don't think that that's a full-time thing. And I know that the guy in their minors that were waiting to come up, Jarren Duran, isn't exactly a center fielder, but he's got the speed for it, and he's a guy that you might park. As the Super Twos comes nearer and nearer, because he's a guy that can steal a lot of bases, and he's done some things to change his swing to get a little more power. And last year, I think he hit like 17. Not last year, but sorry, whatever. What I had heard was that he showed a little more power last year, based on some changes working with the staff, and it was apparent a bit in the spring training. I hate that people talk about catchers a lot when they talk about picking up players. We got to do it. Wilson Ramos, Omar Narvaez, Carson Kelly, Tucker Barnett are available in Yahoo. If you don't like your catcher, if any of those 4 are available, you should take them. In the deeper leagues, and it really sucks, in deeper leagues, Kyle Higashioka is a guy that plays in a good lineup. He should take that job away from the guy who's now injured, Gary Sanchez. Max Stassi got hurt in Los Angeles with the Angels, and I've always had a thing for Kurt Suzuki. I'm actually shocked that Stassi is their starting catcher because he's a bad fielder. Suzuki's actually a better fielder than Stassi. If you want somebody that just won't hurt you, Austin Barnes to catcher leagues. There are guys out there that will just hit you home runs. Dom Nunez, the other side of the Rocky, he has 3 home runs and 5 hits. And one guy that I always like in 2-catcher leagues, one of my favorite 2-catcher little sleeper guys is Jason Castro. Now, Jason Castro hit you 169, but who cares? Because he only bats versus lefties. And this year he's got 2 home runs and 19 bats versus lefties. Versus lefties, the guy is like, Babe Ruth light. Versus righties, he stinks. But if you're gonna have a guy with a low batting average, I'd rather have 200 at bats than 400 at bats. So he's a guy that is always like my super fallback second catcher in a 15-team league, because he'll give you some goodness without the badness. We talk about pitchers. That's really all I got, and we're right at about the 90-minute mark. Probably boring the hell out of people here. This show is, like I said, it's been proven to be 77% effective in a sample of baseball players in South Africa. The show does not cause blood clots, and we're basically done for the day. I'd like to thank the people for showing up. We have a guest, Simone. There's some way that you can see who everybody who's in your chat room, and I don't see it. I see things like Facebook use or whatever, but I do this primarily for the people on the people. I think more of the guys that are downloaders. I know there's like 21 subscribers to my podcast, and I want to get this out before the Fab goes night at midnight, because in weekly leagues, and the preferable way to play is weekly transactions, daily lineups, because it solves most every problem. That there are some things that people take advantage of that just make the game a little worse, like streaming pitchers. So you really don't want to have daily pickups, because that'll be a thing. Now you can stream on a weekly basis, but you also have to compete against everyone else. It's not just first come first serve kind of garbage. You know what that trade was? Anyone out there still listening? I'll bring it up it'll be the last thing I say before I go today. Are we still angry? Do we need to take a deep breath? Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. You want a happy thought? I think I'm going to order some Mexican food. The trade that was vetoed in my league, and I don't think I've been vetoed in a very, very, very long. I think the last trade I was ever vetoed was that crazy Chris Shelton for Barry Bonds trade in whatever year Chris Shelton was relevant for 2 weeks. But I had a trade vetoed this week in a thing. I had a league that didn't start till the second week because we were having trouble getting people together. So in order to facilitate having the league go, we postponed it the second week. I decided that I would be one of the guys that they didn't have to consider time for. So they held the draft when it wasn't good for me. So I auto-drafted. And I wound up having a plethora of middle infielders. I have 9 middle infielders. This is only a 10-team league. It's not that deep. And another team that was actually a good friend of mine in my Dynasty League. He's been my vice commissioner every year, but he's a dude that lives in Germany, so he's never available for a live draft. So he's like, yeah, I'll do it too. So he and Andrea's angry. I heard you guys this week being angry. Well, anyway, he drafted a lot of outfielders. So I offered him this trade, and it was vetoed. Here's the trade. Ready for it? I offered him Tim Anderson straight up for Nicholas Castellanos. That's something you can mull about for 3 days. I don't know how it got vetoed. I'd never seen trades get vetoed before. Anyway, what's there to be angry about? Baseball's on and it's good. Yeah, our guys get injured, but things are working out. And with that, I wish I had a good way of signing out. I'll sign out with that. Oh, maybe I should repeat the thing that I would say every week. If you're in an 8-hour slow draft, 8 hours is a maximum amount of time, not a suggested amount of time. See you next Sunday, or see you Monday night with Andrea and the friends, 8 p.m. And I'm going to log out and end the broadcast.